Hey, you guys, welcome back to Rocket City Yardstead. I'm Sarah. Welcome. So, today's just going to be a kitchen preservation day. I have a bunch of cherry tomatoes here that I need to get processed. I have so many cucumbers still, and I have this one eggplant. My eggplant plants are actually covered in, that's kind of a tongue twister, isn't it? Eggplant plants. Anyway, I have tons of eggplants on my plants that are about this big, but this guy is not going to last until those are ready. So that I'm just going to roast up and mash it up and put it in the freezer, and we'll save it till we have more eggplants. But the cherry tomatoes, we're going to turn into cherry tomato jam. I've never made tomato jam before, but I've heard wonderful things about it. And so I thought we could try that together. And I'll let you guys know what I think. But I've heard it described as kind of like adult ketchup. And so I thought, well, that sounds good. And it would be a great way to use up some of these cherry tomatoes. Now, this is about 2.5 pounds of cherry tomatoes. And the recipe that I have calls for 5 pounds. So I'm cutting it in half. And even at 5 pounds, it says it only makes about 3 half-pint jars. So this really is just kind of a tester, and we'll see if we like it or not. And then with the cucumbers, I don't know why I haven't done this yet this year, because you have been hearing me talk about how I'm just swimming in cucumbers. It's fantastic freeze dried. I'll just peel it and shred it up and put it in the freeze dryer. And then over the winter, it's great for making tzatziki sauce. Freeze-dried cucumber tastes just like fresh cucumber. So when you put it in that tzatziki sauce, you'd never know once it's had time to reconstitute that it was not fresh cucumbers. So the first thing I need to do is get these cherry tomatoes run through my food processor just a little bit, just to chop them up and get them into slightly smaller pieces. And then we can add all of the ingredients that go in our jam. All right, so I'm going to get the rest of my tomatoes into the pot. And then we can add all the other ingredients. I'm hoping this is really good, because it sounds like it would be great on like burgers, or I guess anywhere you'd use ketchup, really, is sort of my impression. But we'll just have to see. So now that we have our tomatoes in there, I need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And then 1/8 of a cup. Having this recipe kind of gave me some awkward measurements, but we make it work. I think this is going to be about the end of this bag. There we go. Okay. And then this recipe calls for brown sugar, which I don't have, but I have coconut sugar, which is what I use most of the time. So 1/2 cup of coconut sugar in place of the brown sugar. Found my tablespoon measure, you guys. That took me about 5 minutes, and I had accidentally left it in my oat flour. I had to give it a wash up. So we're going with 2 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, It calls for fresh ginger, which I don't have, but I have a minced ginger that's dried, and I think that that will work. It honestly looks like it's freeze dried to me. It might be dehydrated, but it holds its shape. So we're going to do a teaspoon of that. Some cinnamon. It calls for 3/4 teaspoon. I can't even begin to tell you what that actually is and a half. So I'm just using the quarter measure and doing one of them and then half of one. Half a teaspoon of black pepper. Goodness, my lid doesn't want to go on. Quarter teaspoon. Quarter teaspoon of black pepper. Got a little bit more than I want. Okay. And a quarter teaspoon. Is that? No, this is 1/8 of a teaspoon. So we'll do half of red chili pepper flakes. All of this sounds delicious. All these ingredients blended together. So I'm hoping this is going to be really good. Half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, one of my favorite ingredients. And then finally, a teaspoon of salt. Double check. Yep, that's all the ingredients. So now we just mix all of this together and we want to bring it to a boil. It says let it boil for 3 minutes and then bring it to a simmer and it will cook down. And you just cook it down until it gets to a jam consistency. And one of the things I do really appreciate about this recipe is she doesn't give you exact timing. She tells you it may take an hour to an hour and a half, that it just depends on how liquidy your tomatoes are and how long it takes for that liquid to cook off. So I'm going to bring you guys down and show you what it's looking like right now before we turn our heat on, and we'll just come back and check on it over time while it's cooking down. While that jam is going, I'm going to work on peeling my cucumbers so I can run them through my food processor with my shredder attachment. I really don't know why I didn't think of this sooner, but I'm glad it occurred to me before the cucumber plants were done, because they are definitely starting to look diseased. But it may be a little late, but I got some seeds for cucumbers that are shorter days. They're like one variety. What was it called? It was called like a tender green cucumber. And it's one with the thinner skin on the outside, but it said it was 55 days to maturity. And I know that can take a little bit longer as we're going into fall and our days are getting shorter, but maybe we'll actually get some more cucumbers before the season ends. I know you're probably thinking, this woman talks about how she's swimming in cucumbers, but I do really like those thin skinned cucumbers, and we didn't get any of them this year. So I'm still hoping for some. I'm not sure exactly how many cucumbers I'm going to need per tray for my freeze dryer. So I'm just gonna peel up quite a few and then load up a tray and see about how many it requires. But I'm just muscling through today, guys. I don't know if you can tell, my head is kind of stuffy, not feeling particularly well. You'll have to tell me about where you live, but we have hit ragweed season in full force here in North Alabama. Our local weatherman put up a graphic yesterday, 2 days ago, I guess, and it was showing the pollen levels, and we were going to have 3 days of high pollen levels and 1 day of extreme. And it said it was mostly ragweed. So you live here and you're feeling crappy, it's probably the ragweed. But I struggle with histamine issues all year. It's part of why my diet is a little bit altered, because there are foods that really spark the histamine response for me. And I'm able to control that mostly with diet most of the year. But we hit ragweed season and my histamine bucket just goes on overflow mode, which is why I'm processing things like cherry tomatoes into jam, because it occurred to me for the first time ever, actually, that I probably shouldn't be eating a bunch of high histamine foods like tomatoes and eggplants and peppers, which are all coming out of the garden right now when I'm having trouble with histamine. So if you have any good preservation recipes for any of those ingredients, hit me up, because I think I need to take a break from eating them fresh. But I'm going to get some of these cucumbers run through the food processor and see how many it's going to take to fill up my freeze dryer. I've already filled 1 tray with shredded cucumbers. It took about a full bowl from my food processor. So it occurred to me earlier today that I could actually do this and get kind of like 2 products for 1. Because your freeze dryer, it's taking all the liquid out of your product. I mean, that's what it's doing. It's drying it out. And it occurred to me that cucumber water is delicious and that I should squeeze out as much of it as I can. I'm having to strain it when I do this because I keep dropping quite a bit of cucumber. But that I could freeze the cucumber juice or water, whatever you want to call it, in ice cube trays. And then we could have cucumber water ice cubes for putting into glasses of water. I thought that would be really refreshing and delicious. So I still have to go buy ice cube trays because I don't actually own any. But you get a lot of water when you shred the cucumber up if you've never shredded cucumber. So it seemed like this would be a really good 2-for-1 kind of deal. Last year when I shredded cucumbers up, I made cucumber limeade and it was delicious. But that was something you had to drink pretty quickly. And this, I thought, would just be something that could be in the freezer. I'll pop it out of the bags once it's frozen and put it in a Ziploc bag, and it should last for a while. Just whenever we want some fresh cucumber flavor, we can just grab a couple of ice cubes. So I'll just keep working on my cucumbers, and my jam is cooking down behind me. So it has been an hour on the jam and it's looking great, but it definitely needs a little bit longer to cook down because it's not quite looking jammy yet. It's still got a decent amount of liquid. So I'm gonna probably set the timer for 15 minutes and check on it again then, because my experience with jam, once you get close to the end, it can go pretty quickly. I'm almost done processing my cucumbers, and so I need to get my freeze dryer pre-cooling, I guess is the word I want. So it just has to cool down for 15 minutes before I can load my trays in there. So the jam took about 13 extra minutes, not 15, but look at it. It's beautiful. I did take a taste and it is delicious. I can definitely see why people call this like a grown up ketchup. So now I'm just going to see about putting it in jars, see how many jars it actually makes, and see if it's worth canning or if I just want to put it in the fridge. Also, here are our trays of cucumbers to go in the freeze dryer, and we got right about a quart of liquid to make ice cubes, so that's great. The freeze dryer is all cooled down, and so I am going to load my trays in here. Now, if you're unfamiliar with freeze dryers, they take quite a while to actually do their thing because they're pulling all this liquid out of the food. So it's natural. But something like this, where there's a lot of liquid, this could easily take at least 2 days to freeze dry. So I'll just seal it up, continue. Oh, can't forget to close my drain. That is really important because it has to be closed for it to pull a vacuum when it starts. So that's all loaded, and in a couple of days here I will have freeze-dried cucumber that I can package all up and it'll be ready for the winter. And it lasts longer than that too. So if we don't go through it all this winter, it's not a big deal. We'll just use it in future years. I am totally shocked. And so I do have water going on the stove. I double checked the recipe and it did say it should make a whole batch, should make about 3 half pints. And it gave me 2 beautiful ones like this and another quarter cup. So I am going to can these 2 full jars and we'll just stick that partial jar in the fridge. But maybe it's just because of the different tomatoes I used. The recipe said you could use cherry tomatoes, but maybe the cherry tomatoes somehow go further. I don't know. Either way, I'm very excited to have extra food to put up on the shelves. So we'll get these 2 jarred up and we'll have some sweet and savory jam that we can have with like cheese and crackers or something. That'll be fantastic. Very excited. My water is boiling, so I'm going to turn my jam on for 20 minutes. And I almost forgot that I was going to process this eggplant. So if you were around for when I made baba ganoush, I'm just going to chop it in half, spritz a little oil on it, and cook it in the air fryer for probably about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I'll just put it in a Ziploc bag, scoop out the flesh, put it in a Ziploc bag, and freeze it. So I'm pretty happy with how productive today has been. I mean, it's 1 eggplant, but it's still something put up for the winter. And the jam gave us extra, and the cucumbers are in the freeze dryer. They're not going to go bad sitting in my fridge. So I'd call this a win for the day. I just got my jam out of the canner, so now it just needs to sit here for 12 to 24 hours. Make sure the lids seal, and then I can take the rings off and get them cleaned up and put away for when we want to eat them this winter. I also got that eggplant processed and ended up with even more than a quart of cucumber juice. I had enough left over that I could go ahead and fix myself up a glass of water that had some cucumber juice in it. So that was a nice little treat. Oh, and obviously the freeze dryer is loaded full of cucumbers that are drying. So a pretty productive day overall. I will share the recipe link down in the show notes for you guys for this jam. It is really delicious. And also, I don't have an affiliate link or anything, but if you've considered a freeze dryer and you're interested in one, I know that Harvest Right is having a sale right now. So if you've been thinking about it, it might be the time to do it. But otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm really glad you were here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.